Hey guys, Mr.Relatable here. It's been quite a while since I made a video for you all, so I wanted to come back with a banger. In today's video, I'm going to be going over every single device that is currently available in Creative and giving each of them about 10 to 15 seconds of screen time, where I'll explain what the device does, how you can use it, what it's useful for, all that sort of stuff. So let's get right into it, and I hope you all enjoy. Before we get started, this video is sponsored by Gen.G. Gen.G recently partnered with Korean rapper Jay Park to release Gen.G's theme song called All In. I'll have a link down in the description for those who want to give it a listen. In order to amplify the release of the song, Gen.G partnered with Quantum Builds to recreate the music video inside Fortnite Creative for all of you to play. The map contains a ton of fun minigames from parkour, target practice, 1v1, orb collection, and more. I really loved trying to make my way to the top of the parkour tower as fast as I possibly could. On top of that, from now until September 20th, you can actually win gift card prizes by playing the map. If you want to check this map out and play it with your friends, use the code on screen now, or copy it from the description. Once again, thank you Gen.G for sponsoring this video. One thing to know, I will not be going over any of the vehicles in this video as they are very simple and pretty straightforward, and I just don't really feel like I need to explain every vehicle. So with that out of the way, let's get right into it. First off, here we have the timer device. It's a fairly new device and it's pretty simple. All it is a timer that you can configure by setting a name, putting it on the HUD, changing the time, setting up channels, and so forth. Next up here is we have the real-time clock. The real-time clock allows you to kind of tie events in the game with actual real time. It allows you to set minutes, hours, days, months, and years with time zones, and you can kind of have things happen when that specific time in real life happens. For example, if you want an event to happen at noon, this would be the device that you want to use. When noon hits for a specific day, you can make an action occur. Next up here, we have the Placeable Mutator Zone. This is a very simple device. It basically allows you to create a zone that if players enter it or exit it, or even just if you want certain attributes within inside this zone, you can toggle that on and off here. The attributes that you can change would be gravity, building speed, costs, editing being allowed, anything like that. And you can basically just allow things to happen in a specific area, or if a player enters a specific area, they'll get a message, so on and so forth. It's a very useful device. Next up here, we got the Wildlife Spawner. This is a very simple device, pretty straightforward. It just allows you to spawn wildlife. You can set what type you want, the radius, how many you want, and so on and so forth. It's very useful if you want to have animals inside your map. Next up on the list is the Customizable Light. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a light that you can customize. You can change the color, the intensity, the type, the light size, anything like that, and you can turn it on and off with the channel, all of that fun stuff. It's a very useful device if you want to add some sort of mood lighting, or maybe you want the map to be really dark, really bright, etc. Now we got the Dance Mannequin. This is a very simple device. All it allows you to do is sort of make a hologram that will dance, and you can change the skin of said hologram, the emotes that they're doing, and just pretty basic stuff like that. It's really cool if you want to make some sort of atmosphere where you have dancing characters, similar to how there is in Party Royale. Next up is the VFX Spawner. If you guys haven't really figured it out, a lot of these newer devices kind of just tell you what they do in the name. The VFX Spawner allows you to spawn VFX. You can make fireworks appear, leaves, lightning, pretty much anything that you want, and it can just add a lot of atmosphere to your map. Next up here is the Sky Dome. It's actually a really useful device. It allows you to change basically the background, how your sky looks, how lighting comes in, if you want the map to be nighttime, daytime, have stars in the sky, just a bunch of things that kind of would help change how the outside of your map looks. It is ultimately a sky dome after all, if you guys know what that is. And what's really cool is you can disable it and enable it at free will. So if you want the player to enter a building at daytime and then exit at nighttime, you can do that. Next up here is the Down But Not Out device. It's a very simple device that allows you to change some of the settings in your down but not out state. And this could be as simple as changing the time it takes to revive someone, if you are allowed to shake them down or not, what team can activate this, I mean, anything that you can really want in your down but not out state. A very nice device if you want to include that in your map. Next up here we have the HUD controller device. This allows you to change aspects of the HUD for the player. This could be as simple as making the minimap not visible, making the storm timer not visible, turning off the player's health bar so they can't even see it at all, turning off the player's resources so they can't see how much wood, stone, and metal they have. Stuff like that, you can change that right here. Now we got the damage volume. The damage volume is pretty similar to the Mutator Zone in that you can create a big zone, and then whenever somebody enters it, they can take damage. This can be from an insta-kill all the way to them just taking 1 damage per second. It's very versatile, and it's really nice if you just want to have an area that damages players. Next up here is the Race Manager and Race Checkpoint. I'm going to be doing these two together because they kind of just go hand in hand. Race Manager allows you to create a race, and it allows you to modify things such as the number of laps, if you want arrows to display to the next checkpoint, and what happens when laps or races are completed, such as transmitting on channels. The Race Checkpoint, however, allows you to make checkpoints in that race. So if you want 5 checkpoints, you can make 5 different checkpoint devices, and that will allow you to kind of have different areas that players have to drive through if they want to complete the race. Next up here is the Fishing Zone. Fishing Zone is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to create a fishing zone that players can fish out of. That's about it. Here we got the Save Point. Save Point is a god tier device. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Save Point allows you to save states for the players, and this could be something as simple as saving their health or saving their complete inventory. This device is so incredibly useful. It allows you to just save anything. So if a player makes progress in your map, it can save it. It can even save the player's location. If they're doing a death run, for example, and if they leave and you want it to save their location, it can do that. It's so incredibly nice. Would highly recommend this device to anyone, no matter what the map is. It's just super good. Use it, please. Now we got the health power-up. It kind of feels like a downgrade going from the save point to the health power-up, because all the health power-up really does is allow you to change health. You can set the player's health, you can restore player's health. That's kind of it. It's pretty useful when you need it, but other than that, yeah, that's about it. Now we have another god tier device, and that's the barrier device. The barrier device does pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to create barriers, and you can change them in any shape or sizes. You can also make hollow barriers, so if you only want a player to be in a specific area, you can just make a barrier that's hollow, and then they can't leave said barrier. It's really, really nice. Would highly recommend using this device if you want to block off certain areas, and you can also turn it on and off if you're making a map and you want the area to be accessible after a while. Let's say you're making a puzzle map and you want a door to be blocked off and then it's available. Well, you can do that with the barrier device. It's very, very, very useful. Next up is the player reference. I'll be completely honest in saying that the player reference is a pretty confusing device and could probably use its own video, but the basic gist of it is that it allows you to store a reference to the player, and it can display information, and you can use it with transmitters and receivers. I know that's not really a great explanation, but like I said, it's a very confusing device to just explain really shortly. Just know that it basically allows you to store player data and player reference, so then you can use it in the future with other devices. Next up is the player spawn pad. It's pretty straightforward. It's a player spawn pad. You can put it anywhere, and you can change where the player spawns with this device. It's very useful. Now we got the end game device. I will be completely honest in saying that I haven't really found a ton of uses for this device, but it basically allows you to end the game on a specific channel. It's useful for what it does, but there are a ton of other ways to end the game, so it's pretty difficult to find a way to use this. But I mean, hey, if it works for you, it works. Next up here is the player checkpoint pad. This just basically allows you to set the player's spawn point when it's activated, similar to a checkpoint. So if you're making a death run and they complete a level, they can step over this checkpoint pad, and then when they die, they will respawn at said checkpoint pad. You can also make it so it clears players' inventories if that's what you want. So pretty cool. There's not really much I can say about the changing booth. It pretty much does exactly what it says it does. It's a changing booth. It just allows players to change their skin whenever they want. It's the exact same one that's in Party Royale. Next up is the speaker. The speaker just allows you to play a ton of different sound effects. They are provided by Epic, mind you, so you can't add your own sound effects, unfortunately. But there are a ton of different sound effects that you can play via a channel. It's really useful. Now we have the radio. The radio is pretty similar to the speaker in that it plays sounds, but instead of playing sound effects, it plays music. You can set what song you want to play, if you want it to be the whole map, if you want it to turn on or off via channel, stuff like that. It's pretty handy if you want to add some sort of music to your map. Next up here is the Explosive Device. This allows you to create explosions. It's kind of what the device does, it's kind of in its name. It allows you to make explosions, and this can be from a player hitting it with a pickaxe to anything of that sort. You can make it for a pickaxe, you can make it if the player shoots it, it explodes on a channel, and you can also turn off the audio and visual effects for this, which is pretty cool, in case you only want the effect of the explosion, aka the destruction, but you don't actually want any of the VFX or audio effects that come with it. Next up, we have the traps, and I'm only going to go over one of the traps, and that is the spike trap, just because all of the other traps are pretty similar in that you need to place them on a solid block, and that's about it. You can't actually modify any settings on these things, but it consists of the damage trap, poison dart trap, ice block, bouncer, speed boost, chiller, launchpad, all of those fun things that you know from BR. Next up here is the creature manager. Creature Manager is actually really useful if you want to have zombies in your map. You can basically change the health and score that a zombie has. So basically, if you want a red fiend, for example, to have 1,000 health, you can change that here. It's actually pretty useful, especially if you want to create some sort of zombie bosses. You can make that with this device. Now we got the creature spawner. This is kind of what it sounds like. It's a creature spawner. It's the big purple cube thingy that was in BR a while back, and it just allows you to spawn creatures within your map. You can change the number of creatures that spawn, how frequently they spawn, the radius that they spawn in, and stuff like that. It's pretty useful if you want to include zombies in your map. If you were to have zombies in your map, however, I would recommend using this device, the Creature Placer. The reason for that is that it allows you to set exactly what type of zombies you want, how far away they despawn, how far away that the player has to be before they spawn, just stuff like that. And what I prefer about this one over the other creature spawner is that you can actually set this basically to the tile. So if you want a zombie to spawn in a doorway, for example, you can do that with this device. Now we got the HUD Message Device. HUD Message Device is another god tier device because it basically allows you to send HUD messages to the players in the map. If you want a HUD message to pop up that says game starting in 3, 2, 1, you can do that with this. It's very, very, very useful. Map Indicator Device. The Map Indicator Device is pretty handy. It allows you to create sort of map indicators. So if you look on the minimap, you can kind of create your own POIs, or you can have sort of symbols on the map that'll tell players where to go. It's pretty useful if you want to have anything showed on the map. Next up here is another god tier device, and that's the Billboard. The Billboard you will see in every single map, I can promise you. It allows you to just place text. That's literally all the device does, but that is so useful. You can put any text that you want. You can change the text color if the text has a shadow, an outline, a background color, all of that fun stuff. This is your device, the Billboard. Next up here is the item spawner. I will be completely honest in saying the item spawner is a little dated now. There's a lot of better ways to grant items to players, but it allows you to have items that spawn on the ground. Players can walk over and pick them up, or you can even make shops. You can make the item cost 50 wood to pick it up. It's kind of cool, but like I said, it's kind of dated now, but for what it does, it's pretty useful. Next up here is the vending machine. Just like the item spawner, the vending machine is kind of dated now. The vending machine does exactly what it used to do in BR if you guys played that. It basically allows you to create shops within this device. So if you want a blue assault rifle, you can make it so players will have to pay 5 stone to purchase it. It's pretty simple, but there's a lot of better ways to give players items and make shops. Now we got the item granter. This is the big boy when it comes to giving players items. This allows you to give players items when receiving from a specific channel, and you can also make it so it clears their inventory or not. And you can make it so it can cycle random weapons and stuff if you want random loadouts. This is a very, very, very good device and would highly recommend it if you need to give players items. I will be completely honest in saying I haven't really seen many people use the Elimination Manager since its release, but if you do, it allows you to create a setting that makes it so players drop specific items and allows for specific triggers when a player gets eliminated. This could be as simple as when you get killed, a HUD message gets played. When you get killed, a door opens up. Things like that, you can do that with the Elimination Manager. Next up here is the Matchmaking Portal. This is a pretty simple device. It just allows players to matchmake into certain customizable island codes, or you can use it as an art piece and use the island art as sort of a picture frame. It's pretty useful. Next up here is the Teleporter. Kind of does exactly what it sounds like. It teleports people. You can make it so the player has to enter one teleporter and come out the other side, or you can make it so it teleports a player to a specific teleporter when receiving from a channel. It's pretty useful if you just want to teleport the player. Next up here is the Tracker Device. This is a pretty useful device. It just allows you to track specific things such as eliminations, eliminated, scores, or a channel, and when it hits a target value, you can make it transmit onto a channel. Next up here is the Lock Device. It's a very simple device that allows you to lock and unlock doors via a channel. That's pretty much it. Now we got the Conditional Button. This is another god tier device that allows you to basically have a button that requires specific conditions. That could be something as simple as an item. You can only activate this button when the player has 3 floppers in their inventory. It's a very useful device if you want to have a shop. For example, let's say you want a shop that requires 3 wood, 5 brick, and 22 metal. Well, you can do that with this device. It's very useful and would highly recommend it. Next up here is the Timed Objective. I'll be completely honest in saying that the Timed Objective feels a little dated now that we have the actual timer device, but it is still pretty useful because it allows players to interact with the timer. So for a search and destroy map, you can have a bomb that is counting down from 45 seconds, and when it explodes, the round ends. Pretty useful. However, like I said, for traditional timing methods, I find that the new timer device is typically better. Next up here is the Capture Item Spawner. I'll be honest in saying I very rarely see this device actually used. It basically just allows you to spawn capturable items as objectives. So you can put a jewel llama in here, and when it gets captured by the capture area, the Capture Item Spawner will then respawn said jewel llama. It's useful for capture the flag sort of maps, but other than that, there's not a whole lot of use. Now we got the capture area. This is a zone that can be used for item drop-off points or capture point objectives. It's pretty useful if you want to make something like a capture the flag or a King of the Hill sort of map, where you have a zone that players need to stand in to gather points. But other than that, there's not a whole lot of use for it. Next up here is the Objective Device. It's been quite a while since I've seen people use objective devices, but it's basically a bunch of destructible items that you can use for game objectives. So for example, if you want a ball that a player needs to break, and then when they break it, the game ends, you can do that. It's very simple, and it's also kind of prehistoric. It's a pretty old device by now, but it still has its uses. Next up here is the Customizable Gallery. This is just a variety of objects that you can place around the game and players can collect, and they can get score or transmit on a channel when they collect it. You can change what it looks like from a coin to a pyramid, all the way to a piece of bacon if you really want. So it's pretty useful if you want some sort of collectibles in your game. Now we got the Ball Spawner. The Ball Spawner is, to say the least, kind of a glitched device. It's never really worked 100% the way it's supposed to. The ball has always kind of been a little buggy, but it basically just allows you to make a big ball, and you can change the gravity, the size, the type of it, just a bunch of different things. It's just a ball. A buggy ball. Next up here is the Class Designer and Class Selector. I'm going to be doing these two together because they kind of go hand in hand. With the Class Designer, it allows you to make a class, and this could be something like changing if you want a specific class to have infinite ammo, infinite resources, how much health they have, etc. And then the Class Selector allows you to change the player to said class. I have a whole video on it if you want to learn more about these things. They're pretty useful. Now we got the power-ups. This consists of the Grind power-up, the Damage Amplifier power-up, and the Visual Effects power-up. The Grind power-up allows you to add ice to the player's feet. The Visual Effects power-up allows you to add a glow or outline to a player. And the Damage Amplifier power-up allows you to change the damage that the player does. For example, you can make the player do double damage. Next up here is the Round Settings device. This is a pretty handy device. It allows you to change different settings between rounds. This could be as simple as on round 2, it transmits onto a channel, or on round 3, it gives you a specific amount of gold. It's really nice and allows you to modify specific things depending on which round. Next up here is the team settings and inventory device. I know I said I wasn't really going to go over the traps, but this one is kind of an exception. This allows you to change specific settings between teams. So for example, if you want team 1 to be able to fly but team 2 can't, you can do that here. It also allows you to end this round and allows this team to win. For example, you can end the round when receiving from channel 1 and team 1 will win. Or when a team is out of lives, you can transmit onto a channel. Things like that. It's pretty freaking useful. Would highly recommend it. Next up here is the Prop-O-Matic Manager. I'll be honest with you guys and say I really have not played with this device as much as I probably should have before making this video, but it just allows you to make customizable Prop-O-Matic game rules and HUD elements for your prop hunt game. Next up here we have the Storm Beacons. These consist of the Advanced Storm Controller, Basic Storm Controller, and Advanced Storm Beacon. These devices are very confusing, and if you want to learn how to use them, I'd highly recommend watching a full complete video. I don't believe I have one on my channel, but I might make one in the future. But these devices simply allow you to create different zones for the storm, similar to how it is in VR. This can be as simple as the zone just comes to a point, or you can make it so the zone has different phases. So the storm will move to a specific area, then to another area, then it'll shrink to a different area. A bunch of different controls like that. It's a pretty useful device if you're trying to make a storm, but again, they are very confusing devices and it's pretty hard to explain them quickly. Now we have the attribute trigger. This is a pretty useful device and allows you to check if the player has a specific attribute, such as what team they're on, what class they are on, if they have a specific amount of score, and if they have that attribute, it allows you to transmit onto a channel. For example, it can check to see if the player is on team 1. If they are on team 1, then it will transmit to another channel. Pretty useful device. Now we got the perception trigger. The perception trigger is kind of a dead device, I'm not gonna lie. The perception trigger basically allows it so if the player walks within the visible range of this device, think of this device as sort of like an eyeball. If the device sees you, it can transmit onto a channel. It sounds kind of cool, but in practice, it doesn't really have all that many uses. Next up here is the random number generator. It does exactly what it sounds like. It creates random numbers. These can be anywhere from 1 to 99, and you can actually have winning values. So if you do 1 to 99 and it rolls on a 5, for example, you can make it so it transmits on a channel. This basically just allows you to make a bunch of different RNG aspects. It's pretty useful if you want anything to do with randomness. Next up is the Score Manager. That's what it sounds like. It's a score manager. You can set or change the player's score when it's activated, and that's kind of all it does. It's pretty useful if you want to add score to a specific player, and you can also make combination locks with this device, which I actually do have a video on my channel about, if you want to check that out. Almost finished here, we have the button. The button is just simply that. It's a configurable button that can trigger other devices when it's pushed. You can change the button radius, basically the interaction radius. You can also change what text shows up when you go and click the button. You can set a delay on the button, things like that. It's a very useful device if you want the player to have to interact with something to make something else happen. This right here is the S++ device, and that is the trigger. Any map that has any sort of complex mechanics will be using this device. No ifs, ands, or buts. The trigger is a highly configurable device that can be used to send and receive different signals. And I know that sounds very basic, but in practice, it's extremely useful. I wish that I could spend more time on this device because there is a ton to go over here. It can be as simple as the player can activate it with its pickaxe to it can send one channel to 13 other different devices. It's so useful, and if you're getting into creative, you need to use this device. Last but not least here is the sequencer. I know, it's another tile device. I wish they would just retire them all, but here we are. But the sequencer is pretty useful. It allows you to send a pulse through customizable volumes, and it can either damage players or activate other devices. It's also really useful if you want to play music. And just like that, we are finished. I know there are a couple devices that I didn't go over in this video, and the main reason for that is because a lot of them just either don't have settings or are pretty self-explanatory, Or alternatively, there are just better uses. For example, there's a barrier plate device, but really you should just not use that now that we have the new customizable barrier device. There's just really no reason. So for that, I just didn't include those sort of devices because, again, just didn't really find them to be all that useful. But that will be about it. If you guys do have any questions, let me know, and I will be sure to respond to them as soon as I possibly can. But that's going to be it for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.